So I'm the More Perfect Union, and you are?
Kay Hagerty.
And Kay, what did you think of the meeting tonight?
Mixed feelings. I thought the discussion was really good. I'm very happy with how it ended, that they passed the resolution. I was on pins and needles the whole time, thinking that they probably weren't going to do it. But I'm glad through all the comments and all the changes that were made that they arrived at the good conclusion to pass the resolution.
I think one of the things that I found interesting was sort of the way that the amendment to the amendment process went. And they kind of figured it out at the end with respect to either sunsetting or just agreeing to put a thing on the amendment. Do you agree with the amendment that was put on that so that it comes up for a review?
Yeah, that made sense. And I really appreciated hearing from Council Member Burning, because he made some really good comments. There were a lot of good comments about that. And yeah, I think the amendment was good. It made sense. It was all that discussion got a little very confusing. I have a headache, but
yeah. And I think at the very end, I think Supervisor Hansen was pretty much opposed to all of the amendments. I mean, all of the resolutions all the way down. I was surprised at the end that he saw the value, the positive value, in doing something that would send the message to other elected officials. As a matter of fact, one of the things that's really important about this process as it kicked off is that Congressman Tiffany, Congressman Van Orden, and others had no idea that this was a thing. And as a result, other counties have put this forward as a resolution for pause. And then even Tom Tiffany has advanced legislation in Congress, which to Supervisor Cook's way of thinking actually takes the power away from the federal government. Congressman Tiffany's legislation actually re-empowers the localities, empowers the states and the localities. And honestly, because of the principle of federalism, that's where it should be.
Yes. Oh, I very much. I agree with that totally. We need to keep things at the local level, and we should be able to veto or boycott whatever we don't want at the local level, because this country was not meant to have the huge federal power being just rammed through. You've got to have the people. I'm so grateful to all the people that have worked for this to stop the taxation without representation, because it was just wrong.
Okay, thank you very much for your time. Have a great evening.
Thank you, and thank you very much.
I'm Addison Runke from Baldwin, Wisconsin.
Okay, and what are your thoughts on the meeting tonight?
All this amendment to an amendment to an amendment garbage was just a bunch of nonsense, but the three got passed, that resolutions got passed that needed to be passed, and proved that, yes, citizens of St. Croix County do still have a voice.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
My name is Jason from New Richmond.
Okay, so Jason, I overheard you a little bit. You were talking about the prevalence of absolute non-facts.
Yes.
What, in your opinion, what do you think that was? What do you think those non-facts were?
To start with, some of the instances, it's not going to cost the taxpayers because the money's coming from federal. Now, that may not be a non-fact. I want to know how to sign up to not pay federal taxes. Okay, because honestly, just like the stupidity of, I have an Obama phone and it's free, nothing's free. That money is coming from somewhere. The other thing about non-fact, well, we had immigrants coming in the past. Why are we not benevolent now? Because the very same government entities that are doing the shenanigans we're doing are the ones putting us at a 54+% tax bracket, which is only about 50% more than we were when we were having immigrants in the first place. We were not stepping over ourselves. Now we're stretched way too thin for ourselves to be benevolent, and it's not the same.
But I think that there is an interesting point where one of the supervisors made the comment about the Statue of Liberty and the message that the French gave us when they gave us a centennial present. the idea that what immigration is and what refugee resettlement, I don't think people can confuse the two. They're the same thing. It's about bringing people onto the shores. When the big boom of immigration happened around the turn of the last century, those people came in and nobody paid for them.
Correct.
They were required to pass health checks, and they were actually restricted into like into a kind of step over here just a little bit. Over here just a little bit. They were brought forward, right? They had to pay their own way or have somebody that was going to take care of them. It wasn't a government activity.
They were brought into their own communities, through their own communities' benevolence is what helped kickstart them so that they could get, hit the ground running.
Right.
And then they could also, now they've got businesses started, they're able to support themselves. They too can roll that benevolence forward to the next wave of immigrants coming into their community. That was a thing back then because they were not stretched so thin by the very government that is now forcing it on us.
Yeah, and I think there is something to be said for the fact that the amount of taxes that we do pay at the federal, state, and even the local levels really is a negative impactor towards things like the cost of housing, the cost of transportation, the cost of energy.
Absolutely.
And I think that people rightly feel, I think people express a lot of thoughts on their feelings about how this was creating yet another net negative for them that was going to make it harder for them to provide for their families. Do you agree?
Absolutely. Other non-facts that were spoken, just so I can bring this up, is when they're talking about not having the purview to deal with this. What they're doing is setting the precedent of we either want it or we don't. This, just because we're not spending township money or we're not spending city police money, doesn't mean that we're not affecting the very people in this county. Okay? Now, let's say extra money has to come out of the school district. Where does that come from? The people who voted these people in.
I think one of the supervisors made the point that one direct cost that comes out of county funds was the translation services.
Right. And the very same. Extra police, extra health care. We could go on and on and on. These are quantifiable and unquantifiable costs. We're not talking about terrorists. We're not talking about, the criminals. We're talking straight up upstanding people that come in and want to do good and want to stay right, still have a definite cost to the taxpayers. And that's, again, a non-fact that was being spewed, okay, that really, I was scared for some of these people and some of the stuff they were saying, like, are you having a stroke? Because they were so far off base, like so far out there. Like, it wasn't just a different opinion. They were literally saying the opposite of the truth, straight up hard lies. Bothers me.
Okay. Well, thanks very much for your time. I appreciate it. So I was shaking my head in that meeting a lot. I felt like I could have been a pepper grinder. I noticed from my spot, my vantage point in the back of the room, that you were feeling that maybe some of the comments that were being made by some of the board members were a little off base. You want to talk about that for a second?
Well, just the first thing right out the beginning with the with Bob Long, he was talking about hearsay of things that happened. He wanted that to be interjected. But when Hansen was talking about the money and they don't have any history of what it's going to cost and those types of things, that's totally untrue. We do have history. We know that St. Cloud or Stearns County did not follow the process. We know that Minneapolis-St. Paul did not follow the process. The voluntary agencies created the program without involving all the stakeholders, which is
the same process that essentially went on in Eau Claire.
Yeah, well, and they did the same exact role. Everything that you saw in Eau Claire was the same playbook they used in St. Cloud. They brought up the resolution when we wanted to bring 15 U.S. Code 8, 1522 to the forefront. They wanted to ignore that. That's when they brought a Welcoming Cities resolution. Everything that you've seen here was almost identical to what played out in Eau Claire, and that happened in Stearns County. So these two issues were played out as though they were running off the same playbook.
So Supervisor Hanson seems like he was really against everything about all of this, and then at the end, on the last resolution that was the actual pause, he voted for it, and his reasoning was that it sends a message to other levels of government, state and federal. I think I agree with that, but we also understand that a lot of the grassroots effort that's been going on, I know you've been involved with it, Dwayne Shoebridge, Secure Wisconsin Project, Matt Bachman, and others, they have brought this forward and created a lot of awareness. And as we saw from tonight, there were multiple overflow rooms of people that were concerned citizens. And I think more so even than the resolution, I think the value of constituents getting up in arms might have been the thing that actually created an impetus for Congressman Tiffany to actually create federal legislation that would re-empower. We heard a lot from Supervisor Cook and Supervisor Lee that this is not the purview of the locality. The federal government controls it. Well, here we have an example of all of this effort that that individuals taught, the public awareness that was brought forward, and now we have congressional legislation that, if it's successful, would actually put that power back in the hands of the localities, where I think a lot of people that attended these meetings would argue is where it should have been to begin with.
Well, we had the same opportunity in 2019 under Executive Order 18333.
That was Donald Trump's order.
It was done. Basically, it was given authority back to the county commissioners to give authority to the people, whether they wanted to be a resettlement agency or not, a welcoming area. And almost every county in America, other than a county up in northern Minnesota, either did vote or they voted against it. So this is giving the opportunity back to the people what they didn't do in 2019. This should have been over in 2019. And shame on the county commissioners either not voting for it or voting against it, because now it shows what happened in Eau Claire is a direct playbook of what we've been seeing all across America. NGOs, non-government organizations that are creating bypassing the electorate, bypassing the people, and creating their own money pot, if you want to say, because they're raking in a lot of money and they're not paying any taxes. So that's what you're seeing. You're seeing a lot of taxation without representation.
Yeah, and people will talk about like the effect of nonprofits. And you said, well, they're not making any money. What they are making is they're essentially taking the money for the refugees, and they are able to support more.
Actually closed, so I do need people to start making their way to the entrance.
So, but they actually are making more money, which in fact is increasing their influence and lobbying capabilities with like-minded individuals within the federal government.
Let's make this abundantly clear. The Lutheran Social Services and many of the volunteer agencies, the 10, are between 60 and 98% funded by the federal government through grants, matching grants, and then they get only about half of what the refugee takes in. So the more they can build on refugee status, the more they can increase the refugee status, the more grants they make.
Right.
So and again, goes back to they don't pay any taxes. So this is a very lucrative program for the volunteer agencies. I mean, they're making billions, and every year, we talked about Eau Claire. They're bringing in 75 people this year. Well, that's how St. Cloud did it. They brought about 75, 80 the first 3 years, 300 over 3 years. But they have to increase those numbers every year in order to keep their facility open. So those numbers will not stay at 75. They're going to go to 100, 200, 300 people in a community or within a 100-mile radius, because they don't want to fall below their number of 75, or they'll lose their refugee status location. So they have to keep their numbers high.
Okay.
There's a very lucrative. They can't fall down to 30 and take over. That's why so many non-government organizations collapsed under Trump because he went down to 18. Well, they couldn't hold their status, so they have to, like St. Cloud takes in 245 people per year. Did you know that that's more people per year than all of the city of Phoenix, Arizona, of 4 million people? St. Cloud, 69,000, the same size as Eau Claire.
Yeah, it definitely has an impact.
Takes in more people than all of Phoenix, Arizona, of 4,000. So when we start off with 75 in Eau Claire, that could go to 200 or 300 people.
Sure.
And then it'll break the system, which
is what I think that's actually the intent.
Yeah.
By the people that are actively promoting this, from a governmental agency perspective.
Right.
But I think we need to leave it there because I'm getting the eye. So I think we have to leave. But anyway, thanks very much. I appreciate your time.
Thanks again.
Yep. Thanks for your work.